is coming and drawing so near. The prophet's words are being fulfilled. The times and seasons are at hand for the glorious arrival of the Son of Man. As lightning flashes the east and the west, the earth will endure the Lord's test. Be saved by his name while he can be found. Seek his face before the trumpet sounds. The day of the Lord comes as a thief in the night. Before that day, keep your lamp trimmed. The day of the Lord is full of wrath. In that day, who can endure? Oh Lord, who can endure?
So we'll move forward to chapter 7, and this is the end of Satan's end of the age hunters and the Aliyah of 2014 and 2015 from Europe. Again, there's a lot of information in this that we'll try to get through most of it, but just think about what we've discovered tonight leading up to this. We've discovered the everlasting covenants, okay, how important the Abrahamic Davidic new covenant is. That's why Jeremiah wrote the prophecy in chapter 2, the prophecy of the fishermen and the hunters. We explored that that has not been fulfilled yet, that we're starting to see that being fulfilled from 1948 until now. And then we discovered in chapter 3 who are God's original fishermen, which were the covenant people, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, David, Yeshua. And then we explored who Satan's original hunters were, which was Nimrod, Ishmael, Esau, Goliath, and the Herodian dynasty. And then we got into the mystery of Aliyah, which kind of brings it up to date with this massive mystery of Aliyah with the blood moons and the migration and the Aliyah from those areas. And then we just discovered who God's end of the age fishermen are, which will be Benjamin Netanyahu or whoever the prime minister are, Jewish Agency, my friend Aliyah Return Center, the World Zionist Organization, all of the Jewish people to fish their own people back. Of course, you and I can be a part of that. And I am a part of that with my friend Aliyah Return Center. And I know some people have connected with him as well on this site as well. So those are the fishermen, my friends, fishing their own people back. And now let's look at Satan's end of the age hunters to see if we can get the revelation as we bring it on in home here tonight. To understand the Aliyah from Europe that initiated in 2014 and 2015 and how it corroborates with Jeremiah's prophecy of the fishermen and the hunters, let us first explore the volatile, chaotic, and lawless climate of the Middle East and North Africa, the main regions referenced in the Holy Bible. Afterward, we will explore this imperative yet tragic effects of the major geopolitical decisions in these regions. Of course, the Middle East and North Africa regions have always been a very tense and fragile environment where Israel and its surrounding neighbors are concerned, and they will continue to be until Messiah's second coming. As we have discussed, the reason for this generational tension between them is the Abrahamic covenant, or the God-given rights to the land of Canaan. With that being said, according to the biblical prophets, including Messiah, there will be a specific time when the regions of the Middle East and North Africa will reach their final apocalyptic pinnacle. Assuredly, our generation is currently witnessing the beginning of sorrows of the final pinnacle, which will journey us through the fulfillment of the end of the age prophecies, including Messiah's second coming and millennial reign. In our book, God's Prophetic Timeline, Messiah's Final Warning, we thoroughly explain in great detail how, according to the biblical prophets, the current kingdoms and events of today perfectly align with Daniel's 4 prophesied kingdoms, which will rise to power before Messiah's second coming events. As of 2017, our generation is currently living in the period represented by the Medo-Persian Empire, or modern-day Iran, which is the second of Daniel's 4 kingdoms. Here is a quote from the book. If we take into account what Jesus and the biblical prophets foretold in the Holy Bible and align the prophecies with the current events of today, then we are definitely living at the end of the age. Furthermore, we are also witnessing the fulfillment of the 4 kingdoms that Daniel prophesied about before Messiah's second coming and his millennial reign. From 2003 into the blood moon tetrad of 2014 and 2015, the Middle East and North African regions have significantly transformed as kingdoms conquered kingdoms and nations began to collapse with governmental anarchy, civil war, terrorism, and civil unrest. These prophetic events in the Middle East and North Africa have created tremendous instability, chaos, and migration as the overall region has deteriorated into tumultuous war zone that is unprecedented in history. As we briefly review the recent history of these countries, I want to be very clear that I'm not advocating for the dictatorships that were removed from power. I'm only presenting the facts of each country's tremendous insecurity and instability, which have resulted in escalated tyranny, war, and terror in the region. Okay, first we will go to Iraq. We will explore the Babylonian Empire of Iraq, and the Middle East commenced its final prophetic explosion or implosion in 2003, in my opinion, when international allies led by the United States accused Saddam Hussein of harboring weapons of mass destruction. Subsequently, the international allies forcefully removed the dictator from power in Iraq, fulfilling Daniel's first kingdom of his latter-day prophecies. Once God weighed Saddam's kingdom in the balances, numbered its days, and found him wanting, Iraq became a grueling, pivotal battleground, primarily between the Iraqi government, Iran, and ISIS, as a battle for the country's soul. And I think we can all remember that, when ISIS came and they were taking over large swaths of land, okay? So that's what Iraq kind of looked like back in those days, just to show you a picture of that. On April 14, 2003, the capital city of Baghdad fell to the United States and its allies. This resulted in a relentless governmental cataclysm. From that essential time in history, political and religious turmoil, terror, and civilian unrest and insecurity have reached a dangerous pinnacle of no return as political parties, nations, and terror groups have pursued supreme power for this strategic piece of real estate in the Middle East, Iraq. The United States and its allies established a transitional government to govern Iraq, known as the Coalition Provisional Authority, which excluded the Ba'ath Party members and other government officials of Saddam Hussein. Consequently, 40,000 school teachers who joined the Ba'ath Party simply to keep their jobs under Saddam Hussein, they lost them. The U.S.-led alliance also dissolved the fragmented remains of the Iraqi army, further escalating the climatic tensions of a post-Saddam environment. The governmental instability of Iraq created different Sunni and Shia militias and terrorist organizations to fight the coalition forces and one another as each strove for ultimate control over the Fertile Crescent country. Before Saddam's removal, Iraq was Sunni governed, but once the dictator was extracted, anarchy persisted between the Sunni and Shia Muslims, the two largest sects of Islam, with both fighting against the new Iraqi government. From 2003 until 2011, it is reported approximately 500,000 people have died in Iraq as a result of war-related, terror-related causes. What a shame. In 2011, once the United States and its allies receded from Iraq, the ancient country continued to struggle in political, religious, and cultural uncertainty as the Arab Spring protests spread throughout its borders. From late 2011 to early 2012, the Iraqi National Movement, which represents the majority of Iraqi Sunnis, boycotted Iraq's parliament, upholding the predominantly Shia government's desire to remove the Sunnis from power over the country. Excuse me. Throughout 2012 and 2013, protests and violence intensified and raged throughout Iraq as Sunni and Shias continued to battle over governmental control and power. Sunni militants persistently attacked the Iraqi Shia population to damage the people's trust in the Shia leadership of al-Maliki, who succeeded the Iraqi transitional government and is allied with and supported by Iran. In fact, the late King Abdullah of Saudi Arabia declared Maliki as an Iranian agent who opened the door for Iranians' influence in Iraq. He continued, "I have no confidence whatsoever, in Maliki to stabilize Iraq. And how could I meet with someone I don't trust?" Abdullah expressed his frustration and disgruntlement with the political situation in Iraq because it is one of the major barriers between Saudi Arabia and Iran. Saudi Arabia, Sunni, and Iran, Shia, by the way, are ancient bitter enemies who profoundly hate each other. Their hatred will conclude with Iran destroying Saudi Arabia at the end of the age. All right, so that is the picture. I think everybody knows where Iraq is. Pretty much in the center of the map is where the Fertile Crescent is, and a very important piece of land with biblical eschatology. A Middle East journalist, Michael Weiss, confirms the dualist proclamations about the Iranian influence in Iraq. He writes, Iranian strategy was designed to prevent the Iraqi government from functioning so that Iran could exert greater control over the country under the guise of providing stability. Weiss also provides insight into the terror group Al-Qaeda's strategic impact in Iraq when Saddam Hussein was in power. He wrote that Al-Qaeda allied with the Iranians in covert operations in order to destabilize Saddam's government. Just as the prophet Daniel prophesied, once the Babylonian Empire succumbed to its prophetic calling at the end of the age, which occurred in 2003, the Medo-Persian Empire, the Second Kingdom, would become the dominant superpower in the region, which of course it has. Iraq and Iran have been supreme rivals for the past several decades, as each country has pompously striven to be the absolute leader and dominant nation of the Middle East. Therefore, once Iraq was dethroned from power, it was just a matter of time before Iran would march across the border and exert its influence and power over the chaotic and volatile nation. As mentioned earlier, our generation is currently living in the period represented by the second of Daniel's four kingdoms, the Middle Eastern kingdoms, which is Iran, the Medo-Persian Empire. The next Middle Eastern kingdom that will rise to power is the Grecian Empire, which is Turkey. For more information, you can check out the book, God's Prophetic Timeline, Messiah's Final Warning. In 2014, Iraq became even more unstable with the rise of ISIS as the terror group seized control over large areas of Iraqi land, including all of those cities that are named, which dislodged hundreds of thousands of Iraqi citizens. On June 4th, 2014, the barbaric group attacked Mosul, which is ancient Nineveh, by the way, and completely subdued the city on June 10th. The aftermath of the ISIS invasion of Mosul forced more than 100,000 Christians from their treasured land, which they had called home for more than 5,000 years. Sad. The terrorists also vandalized and burned down their churches, monasteries, including heritage sites and artifacts. However, on October 16, 2016, Iraqi, Kurdish, American, Turkish, and French armed forces launched a cohesive military venture to recapture Mosul from ISIS. Subsequently, under the largest deployment of Iraqi forces by U.S. and coalition forces, a massive military offensive liberated the ancient city of Mosul from the barbaric group ISIS. On June 9, 2017, Iraqi Prime Minister al-Abadi arrived in Mosul to declare the liberation of Mosul and reclaim it after 3 years of ISIS control. The next day, a formal declaration made the liberation of Mosul official. In summary, the fall of Iraq in 2003 not only destabilized the country with violence and death, but it also created a domino effect of instability and lawlessness throughout the region as terrorist nations and organizations filled the vacuum it created. The fall of Iraq also began an enormous refugee migration pandemic in the region when 1.5 million Iraqi citizens departed to Syria, which eventually would have its own refugee crisis. It also paved the way for Iran to begin fulfilling its prophetic calling, which is the second biblical Middle Eastern kingdom to rise to power at the end of the age. As of this writing, Iran is currently the kingdom our generation is living in, and still today. Okay, so now let's move to Iran. We're just going through the Middle East, and we're looking at the final explosion of the Middle East, and you're going to see why Europe was facing so much problems in 2014 and 2015 with the blood moon. So we're setting the stage of what's happened 2003, the Arab Spring, and then we're going to get into the migration into Europe, and then you're going to see the Aliyah from Europe. But we have to see how all this came to be with the Middle East, with all the chaos, the government anarchy, the protests, civilian unrest, and all of the countries over there. We're going to go through them. In summary, we'll go through it and we'll paint a picture of why it happened in Europe the way it did. As we briefly discussed, after the nation represented by Daniel's Babylonian Empire fell in 2003, the prophet declared that Iran would rise to power to fulfill its prophetic destiny. Since 2003, Iran, which is the ram depicted in Daniel 8, began its push westward, northward, and southward so that no one could withstand him, nor was there anyone that could deliver from his hand, but he did according to his will, and he became great. As of 2017, Iran continues to fulfill its prophetic calling by also financing and advocating terrorism and government anarchy throughout the region, which was consummated with regional chaos and civilian unrest across the Middle East. Iraq, Yemen, Lebanon, Syria, Gaza, all of these areas, they have basically poured out their antennas with evil. Iran has. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, when questioned about Iran and their behavior since the catastrophic nuclear deal by the Obama administration, compared the terrorist nation to a hungry tiger that is unleashed. I strongly concur with Netanyahu's analysis because Iran will proceed to fulfill its prophetic calling by forming a Shia crescent from Iran to the Mediterranean Sea. So the arrows are pointing to where they have major influence in the Middle East: Yemen, Iraq, Syria, Gaza, Lebanon, as well with Hezbollah. That's where they have spread their antennas out unto. As Iran perpetually spews out its evil proclamations towards the United States and Israel, referring to them as Big Satan and Little Satan, respectively, and declaring death to Israel and America, the Shia nation persists in marching across the Middle East, financing and supporting terror. Since the fall of Iraq in 2003, Iran's dominance of the Middle East has resulted in war, terror, devastation, and civilian unrest and instability. In the past decade, as war and terrorism has perpetuated over the oil-rich land of Iraq, Iran has marched into it and financed and controlled Iraqi leaders such as al-Maliki as an Iranian agent. Additionally, Iran directly controls terrorist groups such as Hezbollah, which has dominance over approximately half of Lebanon, and Hamas, which resides in the Gaza Strip. Think about what's going on today, by supporting them financially and militarily. In fact, the Hezbollah leader, Hassan Nasrallah, declared Hezbollah gets its money and arms from Iran. And as long as Iran has money, so does Hezbollah. Keep in mind that Iran, along with Hezbollah and Hamas, has proclaimed their ultimate goal is to wipe Israel off the face of the earth. Think about what they're fighting today. Furthermore, Iran has also invaded Yemen to battle Saudi Arabia for regional power. When I say invaded, they have basically influence, not really invasion, but just influence with the Houthi rebels over there. So not really invaded, that's probably not the right term. They have massive influence. They have not invaded Yemen. They have influence with the Houthi rebels over there. For regional power, resulting in government anarchy, civilian unrest, and terror, Iran has major influence and control over leaders and groups in Yemen, which is located on Saudi Arabia's southern border, which surely poses a national security issue for Arabia. This is the prominent reason for the Yemen conflict, as Iran is strategically setting up a biblical showdown with Saudi Arabia in the future. From March 2015 to March 2017, the Yemen conflict resulted in 7,600 deaths, 42,000 injured, and 180,000 people have fled the war-zone country. In its most recent march of war, Iran has ground troops in Syria, where as of 2014 and 15, the tragic civil war had escalated in horrific intensity. Iran directly supports Syria and its president, Bashar al-Assad, and it provides a tremendous amount of financial and military support. Labib al-Nahas, the chief of foreign relations for Arar Sham, who leads the principal organization of the Syrian Islamic Front, declared that Iran is viciously seeking to create areas it can control. Quote unquote, Iran was very ready to make a full swap between the north and the south. They wanted a geographical continuation into Lebanon. Full sectarian segregation is at the heart of the Iranian project in Syria. They are looking for geographical zones that can be fully dominant and influence. This will have repercussions on the entire region. He continued, this is not just altering the demographic balance, this is altering the balance of influence in all these areas and across Syria itself. Whole communities will be vulnerable. War with Iran is becoming an identity war. They want a country in their likeness, serving their interests. The region can't tolerate that. Without a doubt, Iran is fulfilling its prophetic calling of Daniel 2, 7, and 8 as it marches across the Middle East northward, westward, southward, attempting to establish a Shia crescent to the Mediterranean Sea. In summary, after reviewing the map, Iran has marched across the Middle East, just as Daniel 8 prophesies, which will also fulfill Daniel 2 and Daniel 7's second kingdom, Medo-Persia. After the fall of Iraq in 2003, Iran has waged a regional, political, cultural, religious war across the Middle East, creating governmental anarchy, terror, civilian unrest, and catastrophic fragility in the region. In doing so, Iran has obtained major influence and control over Iraq, Lebanon, Yemen, and Syria as it continues to fulfill its prophetic calling. Okay, I'm going to skip ISIS because ISIS is really not a player really at the moment. So I'm going to skip those guys. Okay, and we will go to Turkey, I believe, once we, if I can find Turkey here. Okay, so there's ISIS, and I apologize, but they're just a non-factor, so I'm trying to save my voice to get through the rest of the slides for this evening. Okay, so now we'll go to Libya. Again, we're just going across the Middle East, looking at the governmental anarchy, the unrest, all of these things across the Middle East during the Arab Spring, okay, in 2012, 2014 area. And now we'll go to Libya. During the Arab Spring of 2011, a governmental revolution developed in Libya, and Libyan dictator Muammar Gaddafi was removed from office by the United States and its allies after 42 years in power. The aftermath of this prophetic event fueled more lawlessness, violence, and tumult across the North African and Middle Eastern regions, which evolved into another Libyan civil war in 2014. Once again, I am not advocating for Gaddafi's dictatorship or any other dictatorship. However, the removal of any dictator after 42 years of power would create massive instability, just as the removal of Saddam Hussein caused in Iraq. On February 17, 2011, major protests in Libya broke out against Gaddafi's government because the majority of the Libyans were disgruntled with the political and governmental corruption. On February 27, 2011, the National Transitional Council, an anti-Gaddafi group, formed to act as the intermediate government in the rebel-controlled areas, and they governed the eastern cities of Benghazi, Misrata, al-Bada, and Tobruk. On March 21st, 2011, as the civil war reached its violent and atrocious pinnacle, which included numerous civilian deaths, a multinational coalition led by NATO intervened to protect the Libyan citizens. Subsequently, on August 20th, 2011, the International Criminal Court issued an arrest warrant for Gaddafi and his government officials. On October 20th, 2011, the evil dictator was killed, ending his 42-year dictatorship over Libya. Gaddafi's void in Libya was filled with complete lawlessness, war, terror, insecurity, and instability. Interestingly enough, prior to the 2011 revolution, Gaddafi warned Europe, America, and the international community by stating, "If you kill me, Libya will descend into chaos and become like Somalia, with warlords running the country." Unfortunately, the evil dictator was correct on his prediction. Several military regimes, militias, revolutionary brigades, and terrorist organizations strategically formed in separate sections of Libya, none united with the other, as violence extended throughout its borders. The National Transitional Council of Libya, the interim government, was not adequately prepared to succeed after the first civil war in 2011. Former President Barack Obama admitted this was his worst mistake, which alludes to the failed preparation of Libya's government after the removal of Gaddafi. The 2011 Civil War and Revolution progressively escalated and intensified into the 2014 Civil War, which is ongoing as of 2017, and now it is resolved. It's kind of 2020, I think, was the last of the Civil War. in Libya, but it's still a nightmare over in Libya right now. In 2014, the second Libyan civil war accelerated when the government of the Council of Deputies was democratically elected and internationally recognized as the Libyan government. Other groups, such as the Tobruk government and the Islamist government of the General National Congress, also known as the National Salvation Government, desired control over Libyan soil as well. The GNC is led by the Muslim Brotherhood and is backed by a group of Islamic fundamentalists, including Qatar, Sudan, and Turkey. In late 2015, the General National Congress and Tobruk government agreed to unite in principle as the government of national accord. To this day, it is uncertain as to the specific details of the unification. Of course, with the perpetual warfare and instability of the country, other revolutionaries and terrorist groups are also fighting for power and control over this ancient land, including ISIS at the time and all the other revolutionaries, so to speak. From 2016 into today, although many political developments have called it for a unified government, Libya is still at the height of a political, cultural, and religious crossroads. In summary, the removal of Gaddafi in 2011 began a civil war that has perpetuated into a second civil war and caused devastation and uncertainty for the citizens of Libya. The oil-enriched nation is embedded in terror, chaos, and instability, which continues to certify the final explosion or implosion of the North Africa and Middle Eastern regions. Consequently, this resulted in a vast migration of its citizens to other parts of North Africa, the Middle East, and also Europe. Interesting enough, Libya is one of the three countries the Antichrist conquers when he rises to his prophetic calling. Is Libya prime for his taking? Now let's go to Egypt. This is the other country in North Africa, northeastern section of Africa, as we all know. Okay, well, let's talk about Egypt during that time. During the Arab Spring of 2011, another revolutionary crisis of governmental anarchy and civilian protest evolved in Egypt and culminated with two dramatic changes in the Egyptian government. Remember, my friends, this all happened. 2003 was Iraq, and then all of these nations in 2011 started to fall. I mean, like dominoes, okay? Libya, Egypt, Syria, Tunisia. All of these countries is called the Arab Spring, if you're not familiar with it. So 2003 was Iraq falling. And then right after that, about 8 years, then we had the Arab Spring, and really has transitioned the Middle East to what we're seeing right now, which is not a good thing. During the Arab Spring of 2011, another revolutionary crisis of governmental anarchy and civilian protest evolved in Egypt and culminated with two dramatic changes in the Egyptian government. In the 2000s, Mubarak was under tremendous scrutiny by the citizens of Egypt for a lackadaisical economy, police brutality, corruption, food price inflation, lack of free elections, and freedom of speech, among other violations. The international community was also investigating Mubarak for his human rights violations, which included torture and unfair, arbitrary detentions and trials. In fact, in 2007, Amnesty International alleged Egypt had become an international headquarters for torture and a place where other countries consign suspects for interrogation. Okay, so I think we all know where Egypt is. You can see the map there in the northeast part of Africa. Right as the connector to the Middle East. On January 25th, 2011, civilian demonstrations, chaos, and violence soared across the ancient land of Egypt against Mubarak's government. Cairo became a war zone. In less than 1 month, on February 11th, 2011, Mubarak resigned, ending his 30 years of rule over Egypt. The Egyptian military assumed power, suspended the constitution, and dissolved the parliament. On November 28, 2011, the first parliamentary election was held since Mubarak held office, and Morsi was elected president. Mohammed Morsi, backed by the Muslim Brotherhood, a terrorist organization. Morsi's election ushered in radical Islamic change to Egypt, including the oppressive and brutal practice of Sharia law. These unpopular events provoked massive protests, violence, and civil unrest throughout Egypt. On December 5th, 2012, hundreds of thousands of people in opposition to Morsi clashed with his supporters in what some described as the largest and most violent civil battle in Egypt since the revolution began. On July 3rd, 2013, as public dissensions escalated and intensified because of the fundamentalist Muslim Brotherhood government, the Egyptian military removed Mohamed Morsi from power via a coup d'etat. On January 18th, 2014, the Egyptian interim government instituted a new constitution, which was supported by 98% of the Egyptian citizens in a referendum. On March 26, 2014, Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, who is still the prime minister today, who was at the time of the head of the Egyptian armed forces that was controlling the country, announced his candidacy for president. On June 8, 2014, el-Sisi, who won by a landslide, was sworn into office as president of Egypt, and he currently holds this position as of today. In summary, the Egyptian revolution produced two government regime changes because the Egyptian citizens asserted their God-given rights and protested for freedom, dignity, and justice. However, in the aftermath of the brutal military coup in July 2013 and during President el-Sisi's reign, the Egyptian government has imprisoned 40,000 political opponents. Think about that. 40,000 political opponents participated in hundreds of alleged extrajudicial killings and continued multiple mass killings of protesters. Terror attacks have been intensified in Egypt during Sisi's reign. On April 9, 2017, two ISIS suicide bombers attacked two Coptic Christian churches at Palm Sunday services in Alexandria and Tanta, leaving 46 people dead. On May 26, 2017, 10 Islamic gunmen opened fire on a bus and killed 28 Coptic Christians as the civil unrest continues its course. Since Mubarak's reign in 2011, persecution and discrimination against Egypt's Coptic Christians has tremendously spiked, causing great concern over the government's stability under el-Sisi. Interestingly enough, Egypt is one of the three kings that Daniel prophesied that the Antichrist would conquer. Is Egypt prime for his taking, just like Libya? Isaiah 19:4, and the Egyptians I will give into the hand of a cruel master, and a fierce king will rule over them. Okay, so now let's look at Sudan. Sudan is right below Egypt, as we all know, according to the map. So let's look at the nation of Sudan. And again, this is one of the three kings that is conquered by the Antichrist. The other two are Egypt and Libya, which we just discussed. Since 1955, Sudan has become submerged in three civil wars, the first from 1955 to 1972, the second from 1983 to 2005, which is one of the longest civil wars on record, and the latest battle in 2013, and it continues today. In fact, there is a civil war going on right now in Sudan. Needless to say, a country in such fertility and bedlam will continue to have major problems with government anarchy, civilian unrest, and terrorism. The second Sudanese civil war, which basically was a continuation of the first one, rivaled the Central Sudanese government and the Sudan People's Liberation Army against one another. Although the war originated in South Sudan, it expanded to the Nubian Mountains and Blue Nile, and it culminated with the independence of South Sudan 6 years after the war ended. Now let us fast forward to the most recent civil war in Sudan. Okay, and there's Sudan right now. That's the map of Sudan, and that's all the players at the time in 2016, 2017. Okay, it's changed since that time. So this is kind of an old map. And again, I'm just copying the book as it was written. But there is a civil war going on right now in Sudan. In December 2013, during the Arab Spring, a conflict developed within the Sudan People's Liberation Movement when President Kiir accused former Deputy Makar others of attempting a coup d'etat. Eventually, Makar started an opposition movement against the Sudan People's Liberation Movement, which was referred to as the Sudan People's Liberation Movement in Opposition. It was also known as the Anti-Governmental Forces. As tensions escalated and intensified, South Sudan became ignited in yet another civil war. Although there have been ceasefire and peace agreements signed, the South Sudanese civil war has continued its bloody path, An estimated 300,000 people, think about that, 300,000 people have been killed in this war, and more than 3.5 million people out of 12 million people have been dislodged from their homes, refugees. Approximately 2.1 million have found refuge within the borders of Sudan, while 1.5 have fled to neighboring countries. The Sudanese refugees account for the world's third largest refugee population. As the civil war rages in the agricultural fields of South Sudan, approximately 6 million people are facing starvation at the time the book was written because famine has devoured the land. In fact, in February 2017, the unity state by the government and the United Nations declared Sudan a famine country. In summary, the South Sudanese civil war continues to validate the escalated anarchy, instability, and chaos of the Middle East and North Africa regions, which is the principal focus of the end of the age events. The prophet Daniel specifically mentions Sudan, along with Egypt and Libya, as the three countries the Antichrist conquers at the end of the age. Please note, in Daniel 11, ancient Ethiopia is modern-day Sudan, Cush. And now is Sudan prime for the Antichrist taken? Okay, and there you see Sudan, right below Egypt, and Libya is to the west of Egypt. Okay, so we'll go to Lebanon next, and we've got about 2 or 3 more, and then we'll close the evening with this as we look forward to the Aliyah from Europe and the Aliyah from America on Sunday, and then on forward. Okay, so now let's look at Lebanon. As Lebanon is a bitter rival and enemy of its southern neighbor, Israel, it is paramount to understand their past wars in order to give us knowledge of the current geopolitical and religious climate of the country. In 1982, Israel invaded Lebanon after the PLO, which operated in southern Lebanon, made several attacks on civilians in both Israel and Lebanon. Additionally, after a failed attempt to assassinate Shlomo Argov, Israel's ambassador to the United Kingdom, an Israeli military operation was launched into Lebanon. After the invasion, the Israeli Defense Forces, the IDF, in cooperation with the Free Lebanon State and Maronite allies, occupied southern Lebanon. Subsequently, the PLO relocated its headquarters to Tripoli, Libya. Once the PLO was expunged from Lebanon, and with the implementation of pro-Israeli Christian government under the leadership of President Gemayel, Israel optimistically hoped to sign a 40-year peace treaty. Okay, and as we all know, there's where Lebanon is, right there above Israel. However, with the emergence of Hezbollah, a Shia Islamic terror group who was conceived by Muslim clerics to harass Israeli occupation of southern Lebanon, the 40-year peace treaty was suspended. Former Israeli Prime Minister Barak declared, "When we entered Lebanon, there was no Hezbollah. We were accepted with perfume. We were accepted with perfumed rice and flowers by the Shia in the south. It was our presence there that created Hezbollah." During the war, Hezbollah not only used guerrilla warfare tactics, but also performed suicide attacks against IDF and Israeli targets outside of Lebanon. Once Israeli ally President Gemayel was assassinated in September of 1982, Israel's position in Lebanon became unsustainable, which culminated in the eventual withdrawal of Israeli soldiers from Lebanon on May 24, 2000. Afterward, Hezbollah held a victory parade and celebrated, proclaiming this as a great moment for its movement. Unfortunately, since that time, the militant group's popularity has soared in Lebanon until this day. In 2006, Hezbollah paramilitary forces and the IDF battled once again for 34 days. The conflict ensued after Hezbollah precipitated a cross-border raid where they kidnapped and killed Israeli soldiers. The terror group also fired rockets into the Israeli border, killing 3 and injuring 2, and seizing 2 Israeli soldiers. Israel responded with airstrikes on targets in Lebanon and damaged the infrastructure with air and naval blockade, ground invasion in southern Lebanon, and attack on Beirut's airport, which Israel believed Hezbollah used to import weapons and supplies from Iran and others. Hezbollah responded by launching more rockets into northern Israel and engaging the IDF in guerrilla warfare. A ceasefire agreement ended the war on August 14, 2006. From Hezbollah's prominent rise to power in the 1980s into today, the terror group proceeds to persistently forge its political, military, and religious dominance in Lebanon, which is described as the Lebanization of Hezbollah. The extreme militant group has also consistently participated in elections, and they won all 12 seats on its electoral list in 1992. Clearly, as of today, Hezbollah has supreme influence over Lebanon. In an interview during the 2006 Lebanon War, the Lebanese president proclaimed Hezbollah enjoys utmost prestige in Lebanon because it freed our country. Even though it is very small, it stands up to Israel. Okay, this is what the war is about. Hezbollah has been described as a state within the state, and its organization has political seats in the Lebanese government, a satellite TV station, radio, and military. Hezbollah receives their weapons, financial support, military training mostly from Iran, and as it follows the Shia fundamentalist theology of the late Ayatollah Khomeini in order to spread the Islamic revolution. Iran has invested billions of dollars in restructuring Hezbollah to limit the power of the current leader, Hassan Nasrallah. In 2010, Iran's parliamentary speaker, Ali Larijani, stated, Iran takes pride in Lebanon's Islamic resistance movement for its steadfast Islamic stance. Hezbollah nurtures the original ideas of Islamic jihad. It is reported Iran invested $400 million, most of that came from the United States, in Hezbollah between 1983 and 1989, and in 2010 alone, it gave Hezbollah an astonishing $400 million. Other estimates declare Iran gives Hezbollah an average of 100 to 200 million a year. Former Israeli Defense Minister Moshe Ya'alon declares there is no nation called Lebanon. The decisions are made by Iran and not by the president or Nasrallah, which again validates Iran's dominance over the region, including Lebanon, as it spread its Shia crescent. In summary, from the birth of Hezbollah, its prominent and ultimate goal has been to exterminate Israel. In fact, Hezbollah's 1985 charter proclaims our struggle will end only with this entity is obliterated. So my friends, you tell me, is there any nation in Europe who has their charter to wipe off Israel from the map? I don't think so. Germany, you name it. No one has that charter but Hamas, Hezbollah. Okay, go read their charters and they're going to tell you exactly what their end time goal is. Okay, we've got to wake up to what these people are saying. They're telling you exactly what they want. Okay, according to Hezbollah's deputy general, the destruction of Israel is the core belief in the central principle of Hezbollah's existence. I'll read that again. Israel is the core. The destruction of Israel is the core belief and the central principle of Hezbollah's existence, which is Iran, which is all of the Islamic nations. They have the same opinion. In 2017, Hezbollah chief Nasrallah called for a cleansing of Jews from Israel and continued to declare the Jews should leave Israel as they have no secure place in occupied Palestine. Remember, occupied Palestine, these people believe that this is their land. I mean, I just don't understand how anybody could look at Europe. These people believe this is their land. They will fight till the end. And Yeshua's going to be the one who defeats these people. I mean, just please read the biblical prophets, literal. Don't go to symbolism. Go to the literal prophecies. And he's speaking about Lebanon. Okay, Tyre, Sidon, that is in Lebanon. We must understand the ancient names because it's not going to say Lebanon. It's going to say Tyre, Sidon. Even though Lebanon is in the Bible, the biblical prophets are going to talk about Tyre. They're going to talk about Sidon, which is in Lebanon, and that is for Yeshua to destroy. Okay, as we continue forward, let's see where I left off. Most certainly, Hezbollah has assisted Iran and others in the regional chaos, terror, and war that has engulfed the Middle East region. Okay, so now let's move to Syria. Syria, on March 15th, 2011, the Syrian civil war ignited and feverishly escalated and intensified into 2014 and 2015. As of 2017, the civil war continues its bloody path of war, terror, chaos, and civilian unrest and displacement. And even to today, The Syrian civil war manifested as its citizens' discontentment for their basic human rights of expression, association, and assembly, and continued to heighten with the Assad regime. The massive uprising of protesters and demonstrators allege Assad failed to substantially improve the state of human rights since taking power in 2000. Eventually, the citizens' protests and demonstrations accelerated into a perpetual military conflict that has decimated this historical enriched land of Syria. The conflict primarily rivals Syrian President Bashar Assad's government, along with his major allies, Russia, Iran, Hezbollah, and Hamas, against various rebels in countries including the United States, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, ISIS, the Kurds, and the Free Syrian Army. Okay, and that's what it looked like with all the battle was going on in 2017. This is what was going on. Okay, look at all those people. Okay, this is what was going on. Okay, and now let's see here. The Syrian civil war has inflicted brutal living conditions on its citizens, inspiring international organizations to accuse Assad's government, ISIS, and the rebel groups, of severe human rights violations. In fact, the Syrian conflict holds the world's record for the largest sum of money ever requested for a single humanitarian emergency, which reached an astonishing $6.5 billion as of December 2013. However, with the perpetuation of vicious warfare throughout the country, along with the dislodgement of its citizens, it has become a critical challenge to connect humanitarian aid workers with those who are in desperate need. As of February 2016, the accumulated death toll was estimated at 500,000, which it's close to 1 million. Okay, over 1 million. The consequential tragic results of this massive bloodshed, violence, and lawlessness in Syria has produced an exceedingly great refugee movement from the bloodthirsty country. Keep in mind, after the fall of Iraq, 1.5 million Iraqi refugees migrated to Syria. As of March 2015, an estimated 10.9 million Syrians, think about that, almost half of the population has been dislodged, as an estimated 3.8 million became refugees. I mean, that is crazy. Lebanon has received approximately 700,000 refugees, and Turkey has been the most hospitable, accepting 1.7 million in 2015. In summary, the Syrian civil war has decimated the country into lawlessness, war, and terrorism as the country's soul hangs in the balance. This catastrophic event has resulted in approximately 4 million, think about this, 4 million refugees seeking asylum in other countries. Along with the Arab Spring refugees in neighboring countries, the Syrian refugee crisis has created an Arab migration like no other in recent history, as many escape the horrors of a persistent and destructive civil war. Okay, now let's look at Turkey and look at the nation of Turkey. I think this is the last country that we'll go through for tonight, and then we'll close it down for the night and get into the Aliyah from Europe and America on the next video on Sunday. Turkey is a transcontinental country that is strategically and prophetically located as a vital centerpiece betwixt the Middle East and Europe. Turkey is a natural gateway between the two continents, and it has been an open and clear passage for the Syrian refugees and others to flood into Europe. According to the biblical prophets, Turkey plays an extremely significant role at the end of the age, which includes Jeremiah's prophecy of the hunters. After the fall of the Ottoman Empire in 1923, under the leadership of Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, the Republic of Turkey instituted radical reforms from its tyrannical constitutional monarchy, including the transformation of its fundamentalist Islamic rule. Unfortunately, approximately 80 years later, under the leadership of former Prime Minister and current President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and his party, the AKP party, who he is still in power today for another 5 years, Turkey has been revolutionized into its former authoritarian state. Erdogan has reversed many of the secular reforms implemented by Ataturk since the founding of the Republic of Turkey, such as limiting the freedom of speech, of press, legislative system of checks and balances, and a set of standards for secularism in government. The AKP party and Erdogan's Erdogan's leadership has been described as becoming increasingly authoritarian, which has led to the governmental anarchy, chaos, and civilian unrest and insecurity in the one-time secular nation. In fact, before Turkey's constitutional referendum of April 2017, which was a vote to change the parliamentary system to a presidential dictatorship, the Council of Europe warned of a dramatic regression of its demonic order. Erdogan won the 2017 referendum, and he now has sweeping executive powers in Turkey, which will lead to the fall of the Turkish democracy and the birth of a dictator. Many critics have accused Erdogan of striving to become an Ottoman sultan and eliminate the secular and democratic principles of the republic, which suggests democracy cannot flourish under Erdogan. And on June 22nd, 2016, the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe warned in its resolution the functioning of the democratic institutions in Turkey, recent developments in Turkey pertaining to freedom of the media and expression, erosion of the rule of law, and the human rights violations in relation to anti-terrorism, security operations in Southeast Turkey have raised serious questions about the functioning of its democratic institutions. In 2016, as he spoke about his constitutional reforms, Erdogan used Hitler and Nazi Germany as a great example of a model the Sultan desires. Furthermore, under Erdogan and the AKP party, the old rule of the Diyanet has been revived, which maintains control over Islam in Turkey, and it promotes a very conservative, strict Sunni doctrine. Erdogan's tyrannical rule has resulted in governmental anarchy, terror, chaos, and civilian unrest. On May 27, 2013, an Istanbul Turkish citizens summoned at Taksim Square during the Gezi Park demonstrations protesting Erdogan's authoritarianism, I can't even talk right now, authoritarianism, I can't speak right now, which resulted in Turkey's largest protest in a decade as it spread across the country. An estimated 3.5 million people protested and approximately 5,000 demonstrations escalated throughout Turkey. 11 people were killed, more than 8,000 were injured, many critical, 3,000 people were arrested. After weeks of clashes between police and protesters, the Turkish government at first apologized to the protesters, but afterwards ordered a crackdown on them. Okay, and then on July 15th, an ISIS suicide bomber killed 33 people in the Turkish town of Surak near Turkey's border with Syria. In 2015. In October, two Muslim suicide bombers detonated explosives that killed more than 100 people outside of Ankara's main train station. On January 12th, 2016, a Muslim suicide bomber in Istanbul Historic District near Blue Mosque killed 13 people, injured 14 others. At the Ataturk airport in Istanbul, Turkey, 3 Muslim gunmen staged shootings, suicide bombings, killed 45 people, injured 230 as terror became substantial in Turkey as well. In August 2017, 3 Muslim gunmen killed 18 people at a Turkish restaurant. On July 15, 2016, a coup d'etat was attempted by the military to remove Erdogan from power. Nonetheless, by the following day, Erdogan's government had successfully reasserted itself with effective and total control over Turkey. During the coup, more than 300 people were killed, 179 civilians, and more than 2,100 injured. Many government buildings, including the Turkish parliament and the presidential palace, were bombed from the air. And there's a widespread suspicion back then that Erdogan staged the event for complete control and authority over Turkey, because no government official was arrested, which among other factors raised suspicion of a false flag event. Erdogan and other government officials have alleged exiled cleric and former ally of Erdogan, Fethullah Gulen, for staging the coup. Whatever the case may be, in the aftermath of the coup, Erdogan has strived to purge all perceived enemies from all aspects of Turkish society: the judicial and educational systems, the media, civil groups, Gulen followers, and so on. Just 1 year after the coup, think about this, 1 year after the coup, Erdogan's government arrested over 123,000 citizens, fired over 145,000, removed nearly 9,000 academics, closed over 2,000 schools, arrested over nearly 300 journalists, and shut down an estimated 200 media outlets, and dismissed approximately 5,000 judges. Without question, this is unparalleled in world history. Many of the world media have described the purges as a counter coup, expecting Erdogan to become vengeful and obsessed with control more than ever, exploiting the crisis not just to punish the mutinous soldiers, but to further squash or quash whatever dissent is left in Turkey. Clearly, Erdogan and the AKP party is the biggest media boss in Turkey. On June 15, 2017, the leader of Turkey's largest opposition party to Erdogan organized a 23-day, 250-mile walk from Ankara to Istanbul to protest of the dictator's widening crackdown on the Turkish people. He declared, "Let the whole world hear, we are facing a dictatorial regime in Turkey, in our own land." Erdogan responded, "Everyone should know their place. No one wins a thing when they, on the one hand, say they respect the law and then go on the path of breaking the law. They won't win anything with this, and on the contrary, it will make them lose." Since the commencement of the Syrian refugee crisis, Turkey has accepted more than 3.4 million refugees from its southern neighbor, making it the host country with the largest refugee population in the world. Unfortunately, 90% of the Syrian refugees in Turkey remain outside of camp settings with limited access of basic services. The influx of Syrian refugees in Turkey, along with the lack of camps and services for their daily needs, have caused a tragic humanitarian crisis, which has resulted in millions of refugees leaving the country for Europe via the natural gateway of Turkey. Cunningly, Erdogan has exploited the refugee crisis as a tool for negotiating deals against Europe, including Turkey's EU accession. In February 2016, the dictator threatened to send millions of refugees from Turkey to EU member states, declaring, "We're not idiots. We can open the doors to Greece and Bulgaria anytime we can put the refugees on buses. So how will you deal with refugees if you don't get a deal? Kill the refugees?" In response, on March 11, 2016, a German minister of defense stated the refugee crisis had made good cooperation between the EU and Turkey an important issue. Therefore, it is right to advance now negotiations on Turkey's EU accession. Therefore, since Erdogan obtained power in Turkey, he has built 17,000 Islamic prayer sites in Germany, and Turkey controls 900 mosques in the infamous Nazi country. Think about that. In summary, the once secular Turkey is becoming tragically transformed into its old tyrannical Ottoman Empire ways, resulting in governmental anarchy, civilian unrest or protest, terror, and overall chaos and insecurity. Regardless of Erdogan's leverage with the Syrian and Iraqi refugees, millions of the Muslim refugees have already infiltrated Europe by way of ships and boats from North Africa or via Turkey's natural gateway. If Turkey refugee camps do not become effective and sufficient enough for the refugees to live and participate in other everyday activities, along with Erdogan's diabolic plans, we can have confidence they will continue to migrate through the natural passage of Turkey into Europe. Turkey, which is Daniel's third prophesied kingdom that will follow Iran, is tremendously rising to fulfill its prophetic calling. In an article on the Gatestone Institute website, a journalist who was born in Turkey, raised Muslim, wrote, "Given the political developments in Turkey for more than a decade, the country seems to be fast-forwarding to be the second and possibly even more dangerous version of the Islamic Republic of Iran." So, my friends, that's going to wrap up tonight's series with the first 7 chapters. We didn't get through the second half of the 7th chapter because we'll just wait, because it will transition into Europe and what we saw with Europe. And then the next chapter will be America. And then we have the final hunter. And then we have the time of Jacob's trouble to go through on Sunday. So thank you so much for your patience tonight. I know it's been a long night. I know especially those who have been with us for almost 7 hours now. I hope this has been very informative to you. I've tried to go through it very thoroughly with everybody. And so I hope it makes sense of what we're seeing here. We're seeing this prophecy come to fulfillment. The prophecy of the fishermen and the hunters. We're seeing it for the everlasting covenants. For the everlasting covenants, we're seeing this prophecy being fulfilled from 1948, the Fisherman. And then what we're about to see in Europe on Sunday, when we come back with you, we'll go through that with these Aliyah coming from Europe. And then we'll look at the Aliyah that we will see coming from America eventually, and we'll look at all the stats on what put America in this position with Islam. So I hope you stay with us on Sunday as well, because we will culminate the book series, and we'll culminate the understanding of the prophecy as we look at Europe, as we look at America, and then we look forward to the time of Jacob's trouble. We'll look forward to that as well. We'll also go through Islam and some of the understandings of that as well. So I hope you stay with us. This was really a foundational, to get the basics, get the covenants, get the prophecy, get the fishermen, the original fishermen, get the original hunters, get the end of the age fishermen, the end of the age hunters, to discover all of those things, the mystery of Aliyah, the blood moons, how all of these things occur. So I hope all this kind of makes sense in what we're seeing right now. If I can ask for grace tonight, I won't be able to go through. I'm pretty exhausted right now, so I won't be able to go through all the comments tonight. So if you do have a question on this, if you could hold that till Sunday, we'll go through those comments and questions on Sunday. I'm not sure how many comments there are, but if y'all could give me the grace tonight to not go through those. I need some rest. It's been a long week for sure, and my voice is about pretty much gone, as everybody can tell. So if everybody can hold the questions, I'd really appreciate that. If we can have grace tonight, and then we can follow up on all of these things that people have questions of come Sunday. Sunday, we'll probably start similarly about 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock, because it will be another long video because of the information that we'll go through. So I hope you stay with us for that as we culminate this journey on this book series. And I think it should hopefully open up everyone's eyes, including myself, that we're seeing this prophecy really gain speed, and we'll see it even more as we continue anti-Semitism rising to the top. And we'll get more into the anti-Semitism of Europe and also in America on Sunday night when we go through the second part or the last part of the video. But I'll take a quick peek at that in case somebody has a question. Please forgive me for not going through each comment, but I'll just kind of see if there's anything that people would like commented on, a question or anything, and then we can go forward from there. 1 second while I look through these things, but shalom to everybody. Shabbat shalom to everybody. This is the Sabbath. We're going to take tomorrow off, obviously, and kind of rest and get everything back into neutral. But we'll be back with you again on Sunday night, probably around 5 to 6 o'clock. I'll post it here tomorrow, and we look forward to seeing everybody then. But let me just peek through these comments. I'd like to respond if someone has a question about this. Let's see. All right. Okay, and there's just a lot of Shabbat Shaloms on here, and a lot of people talking to each other, which is awesome. Let's see here. Yeah, this is funny. Yeah, anybody need popcorn or coffee? Yeah, for sure. For sure. Okay, yeah, this is a question I'd like to answer. Will the Antichrist have something to do with the hunter who hunts the Jewish people? So it goes back into Ezekiel 38, right? So Ezekiel 38 says, won't you know, Gog, Antichrist, when they are in the land safely? So yes, he will know that they're in the land safely, and because the hunters will bring them back. I don't think he's involved in that personally. I think we'll see what the final hunter chapter says, but once they get back into the land, that prophecy will be fulfilled, and then he will come against it. And again, he's going to exile the people. Okay, so the Antichrist is going to exile the people from the land, not bring them back to the land. He's not going to bring them back. In fact, Messiah tells the people to flee to the mountains, during the last 3.5 years. So at the 3.5 year mark, and we're going to go through this on Sunday, Jeremiah's prophecy will be fulfilled because the fishermen will be done and the hunters will be done. There's no reason to make Aliyah during the last 3.5 years because Messiah says to flee to the mountains. So that's when that prophecy will be fulfilled. So if I can just answer that in that quick fashion, but we will go through it on Sunday night through the scriptures, and you'll see that how this prophecy of Jeremiah 16, there's no reason to fish the people back to the land, because that's going against what Messiah said, with fleeing to the mountains. And of course, they're not going to be hunted back to the land. They're going to be taken away from the land. So I hope that helps Denise with that. And we'll go through it more thoroughly when we get to Sunday night. All right. Yeah, this is a great question. Satan's hunters will go after Jews and Christians, to make that clear, but the prophecy is just written for the Jewish people. But anti-Semitism and Islam will get so bad that they're going to come for all of us, as we all know. So yes, the prophecy is written for the Jewish people, but for the Jewish people to return back to the promised land, the world's going to be so chaotic that it's going to come for all of the believers in God. I do believe that, but the prophecy itself, of course, is written for the Jewish people. So I hope that helps, Diane. Or Denise. I'm sorry. I think both commented on that. It's pretty interesting. Both said it at the same time. Will Satan's hunters go after Jews or all unbelievers? My question is, will Satan go after Jews? They basically said the same thing about a minute apart. That's pretty cool. So yes, the hunters will come after everybody, just like ISIS did, they're going to come after everybody, but really the Jewish people will be provoked back because of the anti-Semitism. And, we're seeing that today. All right. All right, my friends. Well, like I said, please give me grace tonight with the questions and comments. It's been a long night. It's been really a long week, and man, I'm pretty exhausted, so I probably need some rest. I really appreciate everybody for joining us tonight. It's been a great night, a lot of information. I know I've picked up on a lot of great things from the information that points towards the Middle East, North Africa, what's going on with Jeremiah's prophecy. So I really appreciate everybody for joining us tonight. I pray that you have a great Shabbat tomorrow, and rest in the Lord, and worship and praise and all of those good things. And we look forward to seeing you again on Sunday afternoon or Sunday evening. I'll post that probably around 5 or 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time is when we'll begin, and we'll culminate. We'll pick back up where we left off as we transition, and we look to Europe, and then we'll look to America. We'll go through the time of Jacob's trouble. We'll go through Islam. And hopefully we'll all have great revelation from the prophecy of the fishermen and the hunters. So my friends, Shabbat Shalom to everybody. Have a great day. And until that time, may God bless you. May he keep you. May his face shine before you and give you his grace. May he lift up his face before you and give you his everlasting shalom. My name is Chadwick Harvey. You have reached Faithful Performance. Thank you very much, everybody. Good night.
Lord, thank you for saving me, lost and found. Move me along the flood water